have Elsie with us today. Elsie Byskov is an expert on the philosophy of Martinus. And Elsie sent me her 2 wonderful books, it must be 10 years ago. And they're absolutely amazing. Really love them. Craig, would you like to say a quick hello to Elsie on behalf of AREI?
It's a pleasure to have you here. I'm looking forward to this. I've only read the description that we had received about your work, but it sounds fascinating, and so I'm looking forward to it. And with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Very much. I'm really happy to be here, and how sweet of you to invite me. Actually, I've just finished my 7th book about aspects of Martinus's worldview. And my first book, which was called Death is an Illusion, and it's probably one of the books that you have, it was published in 2002. And I think it happened like that when, when the pupil is ready, the teacher appears, because I'd been a searching soul for my whole life, and I was an atheist, and I didn't believe in anything. I didn't like the religions. But then one day, a book about Martinus sort of fell into my lap, and immediately I knew that this was what I had been searching for. And this resulted in me reading the 2 main works of Martinus, which are called the Book of Life, which is in 7 volumes and 3,000 pages. And another major work he's written, The Eternal World Picture, which is in 6 volumes and 4,000 pages, I think it is. And he's written in total he's written 10,000 pages of spirit. When I had read the major part of it, I was so enthusiastic that I couldn't sit still, and I thought I have to tell somebody about that. And that resulted in my book Death is an Illusion, which, as I said, came out in 2002. So that has been quite a long time on the market. What happened was that when Martinus was 30, he sat down one day to meditate on the concept of God. And he experienced how he left his physical body and was able to view the whole world. He could see the planet spin, and he could see the valleys and mountains and rivers and seas and all that. And he had definitely been lifted up to another plane of existence. And at a certain point, his consciousness could take no more of this. It was a very high vibrating vibration he had entered, and he was sure that it was a divine vibration. And the next day, more or less the same thing happened. And after that, he noticed that his consciousness had been expanded, so that whenever he concentrated on a question, the answer came to him immediately. And he realized that there was no question he couldn't answer. And I know this sounds really strange, but he had actually attained cosmic consciousness, which of course means that he has a consciousness that could encompass the whole of the cosmos. And after these experiences, he was very confused to begin with. He was just a very ordinary man. He had never studied anything. He worked at a dairy as a clerk, and he wanted, of course, to tell the world about it, but some years passed until he was able to write. And from then on till his death in 1981, at the age of 90, he wrote every day, and that resulted in 10,000 pages of spiritual wisdom. And it is undoubtedly the most complete spiritual revelation ever disclosed to humankind. It is huge. It is so enormous. It is mind-blowing. The information that he has about everything and then some is just absolutely fantastic. So it has been my passion ever since I encountered it, and that is 23 years ago now. And I read in it every day, and I write about it. I have a blog on my website, newspiritualscience.com. And I'm really enthusiastic about it, because there's no doubt that there's a huge spiritual awakening coming down onto the earth at this point in time. And the Martinus material, I'm not in doubt that the Martinus material will become the foundation for a completely new world culture. We're only just starting, and he only died 37 years ago. And we're only just beginning to realize what it is, what a legacy he has left. And we're only just beginning to spread the word about it, because he wrote it all in Danish, and I am fortunate to be Danish so that I can read it in its original language. And it's in the process of being translated into a whole number of languages. And of course, a lot of it has been translated, and you can see it all at the Martinus Institute's website, martinus.dk. But in its totality, it is still only available in Danish. And I don't know if you want me to say a little bit about the main things that Martinus tells. The first, the most important thing is, of course, I think, to realize that we are not identical to our physical body. Our physical body is just an instrument that our spirit uses for our sojourn here on the physical plane. And so what is it that we are? We are our spirit, or we are our consciousness. Our consciousness and our spirit and our I are basically the same. And they consist of what Martinus calls ray-formed matter, but that is really the same as energy or electromagnetic radiation. So who we really are is this spiritual body. We are our spiritual body. We are not our physical body. And our spiritual body is an eternal entity. We are alive in an eternal universe. And we are as eternal as the universe because we are part of it. We are a part of the universe or God. We are sons of God, as Martinus calls us. That doesn't mean that we are not also daughters, because of course we are. But so our identity is not the physical body. And I think this is the point that is so important. And if only more people would realize that we do not only live one life. And I think I think the one life theory, it so sucks. And I mean, a lot of people, most people believe that we only live once, but of course we don't. We live an endless number of lives. And when I say of course, it's because if we only lived one life, what would the point be? I mean, we see so many different fates. We see people who live a horrible life in war and poverty and misery. And we see other people who live a prosperous life in happiness and abundance. And then we say, yeah, that was that one life. And then you say, where's the justice? Where's the justice in the world? Where's the logic? How can one life be dished out like that, totally randomly? And of course, it's because it's not like that. We do not only live one life, we live an endless number of lives, really. And what is so absolutely mind-blowing about the Martinus material is that, and this is the first time in human history that our complete journey through eternity has been revealed. And I write about it, of course, in my first book, Death is an Illusion, which actually on the front page. We move in cycles through eternity, and then we move upwards in spirals so that we don't repeat the same cycle again and again. And what Martinus also underlines to a great degree is that what we sow in one life, we can reap in another life. He says that it's very important for people today to realize that the law of karma is what rules our fate. And the law of karma simply states that we reap as we sow. But what we sow in one life, we can reap in a later life. And that means that when we look at the world today and we see all those people who believe in the one life theory, and they think that they can just treat other people in whichever way they want. They can shoot, they can cheat, they can kill, they can maim, they can throw bombs, they can do all sorts of horrible things to other people. And they think that they can do that. That won't affect them at all. And then they have simply not taken the law of karma into account, because the law of karma will mean that they will reap exactly the same as what they have exposed other people to. And what they also don't realize is that, well, they think I've done something wrong. It didn't happen in this life, so I go scot-free. No, you don't. Because what you sow in one life, you can reap in a later life. It can take several incarnations for something that you have sown to come back to your own life as fate. So I think that this has this realizing the law, the effects of the law of karma, the workings of the law of karma, Martinus says is the greatest challenge facing humankind at this moment. Because once we realize that what we do to others, we eventually do to ourselves, that really should have a sobering effect, shouldn't it, on our behavior. So I think these like the main point, but there are so many other points that I can talk about. Wendy, do you have anything you want me to talk about?
Well, I think you've done a wonderful start. What if we ask people some questions? Would that work for you if we get people to take a particular
Absolutely.
aspect? So I'm just going to go into the gallery view. I'd like to start you off. Let's get an idea of what does he say happens when you die. That's the obvious question that a lot of people will want to know. What happens once you cross over?
Yes, what happens is that you pull your consciousness or spirit body out of your physical instrument, because the physical instrument you only use as long as it is serviceable. But when it becomes injured or because of old age or ill or something, it is no longer a serviceable instrument, so you pull out. And what happens is that your spirit body, which is really your consciousness, that operates on a specific wavelength, because everything is vibration. Everything in the universe has a specific vibration. And once you pull out, your spirit body will be attracted to a similar vibration in the spiritual world, which that is the law of attraction, of course, that sees to that. So that means that if you are a very kind and loving person, you will be attracted to a wavelength that corresponds to that mindset, and you will enter that wavelength, and that will be your destination at the point of death. And that will of course be a very nice place to be, because you will be surrounded by other like-minded beings who are also kind and loving. If on the other hand you are a terrorist and you are filled with anger and pissed offness and hatred, you will be attracted to a wavelength that corresponds to that mindset, and that will not be such a nice place. And then you will stay there for some time. Like for instance, if you, let us say that you are a terrorist and you are attracted to this unpleasant and angry wavelength, then that won't be a very nice place to be. It will be dark, it will be full of like-minded, angry people. There's no place to go and call your mother. There's no back garden you can go into. There's only this dark wavelength. But what happens is that when you ask for help, you will get help. Let us say that you have landed on a dark wavelength and you're unhappy there. Nothing will happen until you ask for help yourself. So you will, as soon as you concentrate on help, on getting help, help will be provided. You open up a wavelength where your guardian angels can come and help you, and they will help you out. And then you will get an experience of paradise, or whatever we call it, that corresponds to the most developed part of your psyche. So everybody will eventually have a paradise experience. And that is because on the spiritual plane, it is really only it is mostly a loving vibration. And what I just told about this this bad and dark vibration, that is more or less what we could call purgatory. It's not what the real spiritual world is about. And then you have a sojourn on the spiritual plane for a number of years, depending on when you died, and also depending on your own wishes. And then you will eventually reincarnate again into a new body. And because you have all the knowledge about who you are is in your consciousness or in your spiritual body. And a new body conception can only take place once this spiritual entity joins the party at the during intercourse, and joins the egg cell and the sperm cell. It is only the presence of the spirit that will make embryogenesis begin. And the spirit will then create a body completely in its own favor. I mean, it create a body that will enable it to continue its development from the point where it died the last time. So whatever we have become in one life, we take with us into our next incarnation, because we have in our supra-consciousness something that Martinus calls our fate element. And the fate element is like a memory chip that holds all the information and all the knowledge and all the experiences that we have learned, everything we have learned in our previous lives, so that when we die, we stop our development, and when we are reborn, we continue our development from exactly the point where it last stopped. So to answer your question, we are attracted to a wavelength when we pass over. We are attracted to a wavelength that corresponds to the most predominant thought climate of our own mentality.
Thank you. Well, that gives, I'm sure, a lot of ground for questions. Somebody like to take over from that point.
I have a question about karma. Sorry,
Yes.
I'll put my face on there for you. Is karma something that happens after we leave here, or can it happen while we're here? Say, for instance, I stole from someone, and then someone steals something from me. One could say that was a karma.
Mm-hmm.
So is karma a thing that happens here, or is it after we've passed?
Oh, karma happens all the time.
Right.
I mean, it's an ongoing thing. I mean, if you smile at somebody, they will smile back at you. That is also karma. If you are kind to somebody, if you give somebody something, you will serve a karma that could come back to you tomorrow, or it could come back. It could take longer time for it to come back. I mean, it's a constant thing, and we all have a lot of karma, because it's every day when we wake up, we go out into the world, we sow things, and those things will come back to us. So it's an ongoing process, and as we reap, we also become more and more knowledgeable and wise about what to sow, because once we have sown a lot of bad things, we will reap those, and those through the reaping of those, we will become wiser about what to do and what not to do. And in that way, we evolve towards becoming more and more humanitarian, more and more compassionate and humane. So it's an ongoing process, and we all have like a queue of karma, and the return of the karma is sort of regulated by our aura, by the vibration of our aura, because the vibration of our aura defines what can sort of return to us, what can come in and affect us. And that's quite a long story, but it's very important to realize that once we change our mindset about something, let's say that I have been a killer and I have killed so many people, and then I have also been killed myself as a result of that a lot of times. But at a certain point I realized, oh, I don't want to be a killer anymore. I just don't feel like it. And as soon as you sort of when you really get it, the vibration in your aura will change. It will simply change, and you are then no longer able to attract the killing energies, because then the killing energies will be rejected by your aura. The aura is a very potent protector of your physical body, but it is also a very potent regulator of what happens in your life, what fate you will receive. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, it does. It does.
Yeah, sorry. Let me just say that many people think that karma is some kind of punishment. It's obviously not a punishment. Karma is a loving instruction. It's a loving instruction pushing you or nudging you in the right direction, so that you sort of learn what to do and what not to do, so that you learn that what pays, the behavior that is best for your life. Mm-hmm. So karma is really a friend. It's not something that we should fear or think that is like a punishment. Is absolutely not a punishment.
Yeah. One question: what does Martinus tell us about the way we should be living in terms of I noticed that you're vegetarian. I'm wondering if he talks about that. Does he talk about spiritual practice? Does he talk about any particular things that can help us in
yes.
developing our spirituality?
Yes, he has written a book called The Ideal Food, and it's a small booklet. Very important book to read, I think. And he absolutely encourages everybody to become vegetarians, because it's eating meat is you kill another living being. And even though you don't kill the other living being yourself, you are an accomplice in the killing. And that will affect your karma. It will affect what happens to you. And I mean, Martinus very clearly points out that a lot of traffic accidents happen because of that's karma for the consumption of meat. Because when the animal is slaughtered, it experiences a sudden, surprising death. The animal was not ready to die. It was not prepared mentally to die. It dies suddenly because it is going to be eaten. And that karma can come back to us, as in especially the traffic accidents. So if you want to be protected against those kinds of accidents, you should definitely eat a vegetarian diet. But not only that, the vegetarian diet is much healthier for your body. And that is what Martinus writes about in the Ideal Food, that the vibration of meat is so high that it is practically on the same level as our own body. And that means that the body has very little surplus energy with which to digest the meat. And that means that the body loses power during this digestion. And this power loss will eventually undermine the health of the body. So, I mean, there's every reason to go vegetarian. And I have been a vegetarian now for 18 years, and it's you feel so much better. I mean, at least I did. It has been a huge improvement in my own life. And so that is definitely something that Martinus very much encourages us to do, to become vegetarian or even vegan. And he also encourages us to meditate. He has also written a small booklet called Meditation. And he says it's a fine thing to meditate, maybe 20 minutes or however long you want to meditate every day. And but apart from that, he doesn't. I mean, there in the Martinus community, or whatever we want to call it, there are no spiritual practices like sometimes we can meditate together, but there's not as if there are any rituals. Martinus was not in favor of rituals. He says that if you want to get in contact with the divine level of existence, all you have to do is pray, really. Just go into your room, close your door, and concentrate on God and express whatever you want to express. And he says that to him, praying was a very, very important thing. And he couldn't understand how anybody dared live without praying. He prayed every day for little things like, please God, let this meeting go well, or let us have a nice day tomorrow, let this outing become a success. Little things. And he says it's important to strengthen your relationship with the divine, because in the end, and once we have become real human beings, we will talk to God every day like we talk to our neighbor.
Thank you. Peter, you had a question.
I just want to go back to what you were saying at the beginning there, where you said about when we die and everything else, and that we come back, as I always suspected, to live another life, to learn other lessons and things that we have to work out, karma and everything else. But do we actually, if we go to spirit, whatever level we get to when we get there, do we have a chance to stay in spirit and move forward in spirit without actually having to come back to earth on, straight away, or can we just move on in the spiritual realms and work there?
That's a good question. But no, Martinus is very clear about it. He says that the spiritual realm is a realm of consisting of thought matter, and it has no resistance. So it's not really a place where we can learn. We can only move forward in our development at this time in our advance through the cycle, through reincarnation. But in about 2,000 to 3,000 years, many of us will have reached a point where we no longer need to reincarnate, because then we have learned all there is to learn. I mean, our whole process of lives on the physical plane are only about learning. They're about learning to become real human beings, real human, compassionate, all-loving beings. And once we have reached that point, and according to Martinus, that would be in about 2,000 to 3,000 years, the majority of the people living on this planet will have reached that point. And then we have no more to learn. We have no more to learn at that point in time. And then we will stop reincarnating for eons of time, because that is like we have graduated from Earth school, we have become real human beings, and then we will stop reincarnating for a long, 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 long time. I mean, longer than I can even imagine. But at a certain point, again, we have to go back, because in the universe, we have darkness and we have light. And at a certain point, after we have lived in the light for very, very, very long, we will again have to come back onto the physical plane and experience another round of darkness. And like this it goes: light, darkness, light, darkness, light, darkness, up and up and up it goes. Okay. So as our present stage, we will still have some incarnations left. I figure maybe only between 10 and 20 incarnations before we can stop reincarnating this time around. And then there will be another time.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you for that. It's very interesting. That.
Like all religions, I think, like advocates against suicide, because it is. I mean, the fifth commandment says, "Thou shalt not kill," and that also goes for yourself, because what happens when somebody commits suicide is, of course, very sad. It's very sad, and I'm not in any way trying to negate that. Martinus says that when somebody who commits suicide, he is probably in a very sad and desperate and depressed state of mind at the point when he or she commits suicide. And because that is a spiritual reality, this mental state is a spiritual reality, you will pass on to the spiritual plane in the same mindset. And of course, that is not, you will not, I mean, some people, they probably commit suicide because they think that they will get out of their mental depression, or out of their sad state. And they will not, it will be the same. It will be the same. They will land on the spiritual plane in the same state of mind, which is, of course, not pleasant. But apart from that, what will happen to the man or person who commits suicide is exactly what happens to everybody else. That once they ask for help, they will get help, and they will be helped out of this dark state, and they will have a paradise experience just like everybody else. And our paradise experience is really defined by the most developed part of our psyche. So I'm sure that they will have, I'm convinced, Martinus says that they will have a sojourn on the spiritual plane exactly in the same as everybody else. It is just the passage from the physical to the spiritual plane, which is always a bit tricky, and that's why it's called purgatory in some religions, because you have to be purged of your dark thoughts. And those dark thoughts will be purged with help from our spiritual guides, and once they have been purged, we will have a paradise experience like everybody else. And then the suicider will probably maybe want to reincarnate again after a relatively short time, because he or she will realize, well, that was not a very good idea. Killing myself was not a very good idea, so I would have to go back and do it again and see if I can get it better this time around. And yeah, that's what I can say about it. Of course, it's not as if it's eternal damnation or anything like that. It is just that it's not a good idea, because when you then reincarnate, you will have to find a solution to the things that made you commit suicide the last time around. You will have to solve these things in a proper way. So you will sort of be faced with the same problems that you were faced with the last time, but then the next time you would hopefully be so experienced that you will know how to deal with it. And I think that Martinus says, if only the suicider had asked for help on this plane, then that help would have been provided. And it's the same thing on the other side. When as soon as you ask for help, you will be helped. And it's just like a waste of an incarnation. Suicide, you can say it's a waste, but I mean, in an eternal universe, we really can't talk of waste, because there's I mean, what's the time limit in eternity? There isn't any.
Thank you, Elsie. Karen, you had a question?
There's several other questions before me. I just want to ask about children dying young. What is the purpose of that, does Martinus say?
Martinus says that children dying young will be karma, that they have been instrumental in the death of children in former incarnations. I mean, if a child dies young, that is that child's karma. And yeah, that's all I can say, really. The child will be received on this. The children have very little darkness in their mentalities. So they will jump right onto the spiritual plane and have a wonderful paradise experience there. And then they will probably reincarnate again fairly quickly, maybe only after 5, 6, 7 years, depending, of course, on their own wishes. But if they die young, they will probably want to get on with their development relatively quickly. And I mean, dying is a wonderful experience, and it's not such a horrible thing that most people have made it to be. And it's really business as usual. I mean, we have all died millions of times, and we're still here. And that's simply how it is. I mean, death is an illusion, and it's not.
There's one here from Jane, who's on an iPad, and she's not sure if she can ask the question. Could you please ask this question for me? Do we only take our own experiences with us into the next life, or do we also take experiences of what others would have experienced during their time on the earth?
No, we only take our own experiences.
Okay.
I mean, we experience, of course, our life depends also on what's going on. So, of course, what happens in our physical life is also a reflection of what a whole lot of other people are doing, like, you know, politics and geopolitics and global warming or whatever. So, of course, it depends on what everybody else is doing also. But it's our own experiences. I mean, our own I is unique. We have an I, a spirit, a core, our self, and that self is the container of our fate element, and our consciousness holds all the information about all the lives that we have lived this time around. So we have a whole lot of information sitting in our aura. Our consciousness is in our aura, it's not in our brains, as the materialistic science claims. And this unit that is me, that is us, is unique, and that is who reincarnates, and we take our own experiences with us. We can only sort of answer for ourselves, so to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What I wanted to do was just share, if I may, what I've learned about suicide from many of the prayer registry children. I run a prayer registry for parents who've lost children, and I want to express my condolences to the woman who talked about her child. Many, many of the children who are part of the prayer registry have taken their own lives, and they've come through and they've spoken, and many of them say that probably the biggest source of suffering is that they regret the people that they hurt. Yes. My own son passed of an accidental overdose, and when he came through David Thompson a number of years ago, and this was years after he crossed, the first thing he did was apologize, even though I told him so many times that he was forgiven and said, I hurt so many people with my stupid mistake. So I feel that there is a tremendous, that they do feel regret, but on the other hand, they all express so much support from each other, even who so many of them that were in that same boat. And if they can see their parents lighten up a little bit, of course that gives them a lot of resilience. But they often say that they're working very, very hard to work through many of these issues so that when they come back, they will not repeat them, that they will have the knowledge to not do that. They also, many of them, and maybe this is just children who've passed before their parents, but they often say they won't reincarnate necessarily until they've had a chance to spend a little bit of time with their parents, because they know what that reunion will mean to them. So even though I do think they will come back, I think they'll have key tools to help them in this life that they didn't have. And, you know, they mistakenly thought that, I mean, you know, although they say it's a sin in terms of the Bible and so forth, I think the only real sin is that we have so many people in so much pain and we can't help them. We don't know how to reach them. But they're mistakenly thinking that they're going to kill the pain, and that's the whole thing with the drug. issue too. It's not that they wanted to put themselves over so much as they just want to stop the pain.
Yeah.
And they find out that, oh, I'm still me and I must work through these things. But I do believe they'll come back better equipped. And I do believe for parents who are really, a lot of people ask me that question, like, I'm so afraid my child will reincarnate before I arrive. And most of them have answered that question by saying, I'm going to stick around until you get here and we're going to get our time together. And I think that love is the,
Yes,
that
I
one
agree
force that propels us all,
I totally agree that they of course they have a huge amount of regret, and they have a huge amount of sadness for their parents whom they felt that they have let down. And I also totally agree that that experience of course will sit with them, and they will take that with them into their next incarnation, so they won't do it again. They will have so much experience that I know that they won't do it again. And interestingly, also, many of the suicidals or children who pass before their parents, they try to contact the parents when the parents are still on the physical plane, and the parents will often maybe recognize whatever it can be. It can be smells, it can be telephones, disconnected telephones that ring, or it can be all sorts of signs saying, hey, I'm still here. And when you take the main message from the spiritual to the physical plane is, hey, I'm still around, stop grieving, I'm fine. And because the grief will often trap, I won't say trap because that's probably too strong a word, but it will affect the life of the people who have passed on to the spiritual plane in a not so positive way. So if you can let them go, forgive them, send them light, and realize that that was a lesson they obviously had to learn, and they will come back the better equipped and the wiser because of it. That will help them. I mean, grieving and trying to hang on to them will not help them. It will not help them in their passage on the other side.
My son Danny came through to me shortly after he passed, and he said, Mom, if you want to lift me up, you have to lift yourself up, and then you lift us both up. And because he said, understand my dilemma, how can I not feel regret if I passed even accidentally by my own hand, if my own mother can't get out of the bedroom? So I always tell parents to make that step forward, because that's the way they will give their child the ability to move forward as well. So I do agree with you completely on that. Yeah,
precisely. I have a question here about I think that's Nigel who's asked about eating meat, and it's a quotation from Immanuel Kant: to sustain life you have to take life. That is the paradox. Yes, well, a plant is of course also a living being, but Martinus points out two things in this connection. The first thing is that the plant does not have an advanced nervous system as the animal. It's of course a living being, but it is a living being that has not come as far as the animal in its progress through evolution. So it is not so, what shall I say, advanced being. That's one thing. And Martinus also points out that of two evils, one should always choose the lesser evil. So when you live on a plant-based diet, you choose the lesser evil in all respects, also with respect to your own health and your own well-being. That was one of the questions. And it's probably not something that you should say. I mean, all you can do to people who are grieving is to show them your compassion, help them, be kind to them, be loving to them, And I mean, it get over such a loss will of course take time. But I think that also the realization that death is an illusion, that it is not, there's nothing final about it, that they have gone on to the spiritual plane, they will come back. It's not, I mean, it's not as if it's the end. It's a process. It happens for a reason. And I think when you have some sort of insight into these spiritual workings, I know that for me that would be a comfort. But then I can easily imagine what it is like to lose a child. It is, of course, it's the worst thing that can happen to you, I think, here on the physical plane. But there's a lesson in everything, and one of the lessons that we all have to go through is to losing people we love, losing stuff, losing whatever, so that we can learn how to deal with that and how to move on. And I mean, every lifetime has its own lessons, and at the moment we are passing through really dark times, and a lot of really sad fates are being played out on the planet. And all we can do is really be supportive of those who are going through these fates, and we should help, and we should definitely be there for them to the extent that we can. So what can I say other than to comfort and help and support? But of course, I would never go and tell a grieving parent that, well, that was your child's karma, because that would be simply not very loving, and it probably would not be accepted by that person either. So
thank you, Elsie. We're coming to the end of our time, and I'd just like to clarify, most of us here are very familiar with spiritualist philosophy and have a fairly good understanding of life after death. So I'm just curious if we have people who are interested, well, what is the difference between what we believe or what we have come to understand through spiritualism and what Martinus is teaching? So far, I've only spotted one or two small differences. Overall, they're very, very concordant. Would you like to speak to that?
Yes, because I don't know. I only know the Martinus material. I don't know about spiritualism, and I'm sorry, but I simply don't. Because when I encountered the Martinus material, I was so enthusiastic about it, and there was so much that's all I've been doing. It's all I've been doing. I've been studying that, and that makes me like really ignorant about other ways of looking at it. But I'm happy that you say that it's concordant, because I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. I mean, there's aspects of the truth, but there is one truth.
There seems to be a strong relationship between Martinus's teaching and traditional Christianity, with the exception of reincarnation. Am I right?
Yes, you're absolutely right. Martinus's work is really a continuation of the mission of Christ, because Jesus said to his disciples, "I have still many things to teach you, but you cannot bear them now. But the Spirit of truth that the Father will send in my name will lead you to the whole truth," or something in those general lines. So the Martinus work is also called the Third Testament. It is continuation of the New Testament. And
does Martinus talk about a personal relationship with Jesus?
Yeah, Martinus was a huge admirer of Jesus, and all through his work he explains what Jesus said. He explains it in a new light. He explains it in a more intellectual light than it had been given at the time when it was written down. And so yes, it is. The two are very closely related. Let me put it like that. Martinus also calls his work the intellectualized Christianity.
Thank you. Marianne, can I call on you? Just obviously, you would have come across Martinus's work in Denmark before. Can you speak to this issue of what is different with spiritualist teachings and Martinus's teaching, or even from what you've heard today?
First I would like to say hello to Elsie Byskov. I'm also Danish.
Hi.
And hi. But I lived and worked in England for about 48, 49 years. I was born in Slagelse in Denmark and have, of course, traveled back to Denmark.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done my work over the last 25 years. I know very little about Martinus, except I know he has the institution there.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't really met a lot of people who knows a lot about Martinus, but of course he is mentioned, I have to say, over and over again. I haven't read any of his books, so what you are saying today is obviously very new for me. Mm-hmm. Also about reincarnation. I have never gone into deep facts about reincarnation. It's something I have just looked or scratched on the surface. Mm-hmm. Mainly because I have seen so many different ways it has been described by so many different people.
Yeah, precisely.
And I have found that extraordinary. And I haven't heard about two things or two people who said the same about reincarnation. My way of life, I also just have to say to you that I have also got a son who took his own life 2 years ago. He was a spiritualist. In fact, he sat in a physical circle. And he has also come back to me again roughly about 6 weeks after his passing and gave some extraordinary evidence upon life and why he took his life and what he saw at the moment, at the time he took his life, which I have learned a lot from, trying to understand this whole fact about taking his life, but has also come back. But it took a little while before he actually got back to me and could explain all this, which was fantastic, I have to say. I learned a lot by that. Yeah. But he has not talked about not meeting his grandparents. He's actually talked about he has met them all and are together with them and know why he took his life and so forth. That, I think that's where my interests were because of my communication skill over so many years. So in that fact, when it comes to Martinus and also to work as a spiritualist, it's interesting I don't know if any Danes or if it's ever come through to anybody. I have no idea, maybe in a communication, maybe something I can look for and see if I can get some direct understanding about Martinus and his work. But I don't know what to say because though we are, and I understand some of it, what you're saying, there's also other things I just don't understand. I have to be frank about that, about the reincarnation. I think that if I look at a philosophy in which I grew up with, it has always been Silver Birch. He has had a fantastic and wonderful understanding again upon life and death and what happens on the other side and so forth. I don't know if that makes sense.
Thank you, Marianne. I think this is the issue for most of us here, is what can we gain from reading Martinus? Is this something that's going to extend us? And from what Elsie's saying, it certainly is. So I think perhaps if those of you who would like to pursue this might be a good time to look at that.
Does Elsie have a website?
Elsie, that's a good. Elsie has a wonderful website.
My website is newspiritualscience.com, and let me just say this: that if you want to have an idea about the Martinus material and what it's about, because it is so huge and it's 10,000 pages. It's not something you just jump into. I mean, I have written my books as introductions to the Martinus material so that people can get an idea about what it is before they start studying it. And I mean, that's the only thing the only reason why I'm writing and studying it is that it has meant so much to me. It has so changed my life in the most positive way that I just want other people to know about it. And if I can help one person open up to this material and see the magnitude of it, that is that really makes it for me. So I mean, and you can go to my website. I have a blog. I have maybe 40 blog posts on there answering all kinds of questions. I have a lot of free material. I have articles and audios and videos and free chapters from my books. So you can go there and maybe get an idea, and you're also very welcome to become a subscriber to my website, and you will receive my monthly newsletter, which is an article really. So I mean, the Martinus material is there. It's for everybody. It belongs to all of humankind, and as I said, it will become the foundation for the future culture on this planet. But first we have to pass the darkness that we are living through now, where we still have wars and terrorist attacks and greed and jealousy and envy, but we are outliving those things, because each time we reincarnate, we become a better and more moral and more loving and more beautiful version of ourselves. So we are really all on our way towards the perfect human stage, the real human being. And so the Martinus material is also a deeply optimistic world picture. I mean, everything is going just as it should. We are on our way towards a much better world, but first we have to outlive the darkness that has come from what we have sown in former lives. But everything is under control. Everything is fantastic, really. And the brightest future is awaiting humankind. We are not on our way down the slope, down the slippery slope. We are not facing Armageddon. We are on our way to a really beautiful and positive future. That is also what you can learn from Martinus.
Thank you, Elsie. Craig, would you like to thank Elsie for that talk?
Thank you, Elsie. That was fascinating. And I think it gives us an opportunity to look at another viewpoint and understand what Martinus has to say. And this is new information to me. So I'm anxious to get into it and read some of your material and also some of the root material on Martinus. So thank you very much. It was very fascinating.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here. Such an interesting audience. I mean, it's wonderful to talk to people who actually know something about this and are on wavelength with it and have experience with it. So that's really fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Elsie. That's terrific.
You're welcome.